Hello, you're listening to the TerraLex podcast, where we break down current issues and trends in the legal industry. Join us as we gain valuable insights from our member law firms across the world, as well as from the in-house counsel community and experienced professionals in their field.
We have a number of speakers with us today, including Karl Diacono, Monica Galea-John, Claire Cicluna, all from Fenlex and Zoe Christou, Nayia Morphi, and George Kalanikou from Nobel Trust, and Ioannidis Dimitriou. So with that, we are going to get right started. We have decided to do this in a discussion-based format. So I will start with some questions. Could you please provide a short introduction on both your respective firms?
Okay. Basically, I'm Karl Diacono. I'm the CEO and the director of Fenlex. Around 2 weeks, I have representatives from Fenlex as well as from Fenlex. Just a little bit of background. Fenlex stems out of the law firm, and this we started our operations in the late 80s as another company. It wasn't Fenlex at the time. And we came out of a need created by clients in the late 80s. Malta looked at opening up its services, if you like, towards A, financial services, and B, shipping, which created a new industry at the time. And that industry created a requirement for the law firm's clients, which went beyond legal. And the law firm at the time saw the need to set up, as I said, a company which would be able to manage the structures that the law firm was setting up for its clients. And in the main, those were private individuals either doing trading or holding assets, or ship owners setting up companies to own their vessels, which they operated and or chartered out of Malta. And that's how it started, as I said, not 30 years ago. And that's a very brief introduction, and I'm sure we'll come to have the opportunity to say much more in questions to follow.
Just to give you a brief description about the firm, Fenlex has been around for over a century. We are a full-service law firm. We are over 30 lawyers at the moment. We have expertise in all areas of law. However, over the years, we can say we've become recognized as leaders in shipping, maritime, financial services, and TMT law. What's interesting about our firm is that we are the only law firm on the island with our own tax department, as opposed to other law firms who would outsource tax advice to one of the big four audit firms.
Okay, I'm Nayia Morphi. I'm the managing director of Nobel Trust. Similarly with Malta, with our friends in Malta, we share a lot of similarities, obviously, other than the climate and fantastic beaches. We also share a very similar infrastructure and a very similar business community. Therefore, we have a very similar history. Nobel Trust also stems out from the law firm of Ioannidis Dimitriou. LSC. It has been set up 11 years ago, basically as a consequence of reacting to the changing environment in terms which we considered to be at the time quite important. So we saw what the future would bring, and we decided to sort of segregate the services by setting up Nobel Trust, by offering a more specialized service, and by focusing on these services that are currently super important for the country, and of course they require a very specialized kind of treatment and dealing. I've let Zoe Zoe Christou, director from our law firm, to tell you a few things about Ioannidis Dimitriou LLC.
Ioannidis Dimitriou is also a commercial law firm with a multi-diversified team of approximately 50 lawyers, which actually makes us one of the large law firms on the island. We provide general services, legal services and advisory services to clients. We provide arbitration, banking, and finance services, commercial law. We have some expertise on corporate law, construction law, intellectual property, litigation, public and administrative law. We are very proud of our clientele, and we have actually been involved in most of the largest transactions on the island, including the privatization of the airport, the port, the biggest renewable energy projects on the island, and the largest building contractors. In general, as a firm, we strive to be prompt to provide informed services and quality services to clients, and to maintain integrity and loyalty.
Excellent. So how would you say that Cyprus and Malta's history has shaped the mindset and paved the way for the country's emergence as financial services centers, development in international business and growth in various sectors over the years?
I will try in a few minutes, because Malta has a very long history, but in a few minutes, give you a bit of background as to how we are where we are today. Malta, similar to Cyprus, was a crown colony up to the early 60s. In fact, we gained independence in 1964, became a republic in 1974, and our economy was very much based in the early days of independence on tourism and on a little bit of manufacturing and the construction industry. Malta has very little in terms of natural resources. In fact, it has nothing that it can call of. We did try to do some oil exploration. The only thing that came out of the ground was hot air. We've been a little bit unlucky in that regard, because we have oil to the north and oil to the south, but nothing in the middle where we are. Up to the late 80s, our economy was very much built on, as we said, tourism, construction, and low labor cost for manufacturing. There was a change in government in the late 80s, and the government had a slightly different vision in terms of where it wanted to take Malta, and that's where our adventure within the financial services sector started. In the late 80s, the government took a decision to start offering, offshore services from the island, as well as to grow the Malta flag. Offshore services was successful at the time, and the flag has been successful from day one and has grown to be at times the largest flag in the EU, and we keep changing places with Greece in terms of who has most tonnage on their register. The situation in terms of offshore changed when the Malta government decided to apply for EU membership. So we started negotiating in the early 90s, and one of the first things we had to do in the early 90s was move away from being an offshore jurisdiction to moving to an onshore jurisdiction. And in 1994, legislation changed. The NIBA Act was replaced by a new act, and that is where the basis of what we have today in terms both of our fiscal regime as well as our offering stems from. Again, because we had no natural resources, the government was keen on ensuring that the human capital that the island had, which is basically its professionals and the people on the island, develop and together with the industry. So, there was an investment in education, which saw a large amount of lawyers coming out, which was if you like, food for the industry, as well as accountants, who today, between lawyers and accountants, you can say they are the mainstay professions that make this industry what it is today. In 2004, Malta, if you like, had the next step in its growth within the sector when it joined the EU. Its fiscal regime, as well as its laws, were screened by the EU, and we joined in 2004 with the current systems we have, being part of the treaty at the time. In 2008, we had further growth in terms of our financial services sector. That is when we joined the Eurozone. It became much easier to transact throughout Europe, and Malta being part of that European Union, being part of the single currency, it became much easier for capital to flow between as I was saying, the Eurozone and Malta. We saw a big growth within the sector, which today accounts for north of 18% of current GDP. So it's quite a mainstay of the Maltese economy. It also accounts for a large amount of people employed in the sector, both directly and indirectly. So, you know, it's an industry that's here to stay. It's an industry that has gone through a number of challenges, and as we all know, we're still going through challenges, but it's keeps us on our toes, keeps us busy, and you know, makes our job interesting. You know, but the sector, you know, as I said, has become extremely important for the economy, and we believe we'll build a very strong basis to be able to grow the sector even further, in spite of all the challenges that we know everyone is facing today in terms of regulation, compliance, and the banking scene. But I'm sure we'll touch upon those topics again a bit later. So over to you,
Okay. So, yeah, we have a very similar rocky history like Malta. I don't know, maybe even rockier actually. We've been through a lot of conquerors over the years of our history as a very strategically situated island in between the three continents of Europe and Africa and Asia. This, I believe, has influenced a lot the culture of the people in accepting, well, sometimes fighting as well foreign conquerors as a result, but still becoming very familiar with the international element. So essentially, we've always been really acquainted by the foreign element, and I believe that we've managed through the centuries to absorb a lot of important and advantageous things that the different conquerors and or countries that have inhabited the island were bringing to the island. Other than, of course, the fact that we have served as a trading hub for years. So the fact that we've had different kind of nations passing by Cyprus, influencing the absolute nature of the island being a trading place, has slowly created a certain attitude, say, or appetite for the island to expand into something more serious in the years to come. And similarly with Malta, we were a British colony. We got our freedom from the British and became an independent country in 1960. After that, we slowly started to develop our own economy, focusing mostly on tourism and agriculture, with the main changes in respect to the professional services happening in the 80s, when we introduced the international business company regime, the offshore company regime, which then slowly and with the negotiations to become a member of the EU has resulted into Cyprus becoming negotiating or changing from an offshore system to an onshore system, and rubber stamping that in 2004 when we have also become a full member of the European Union, and 2008 a full member of the Eurozone. As an island, we have a very highly educated personnel, and the people generally tend to study abroad. Therefore, we had a wide range of professionals which have supported this industry throughout the years. And as a result of the general friendliness to international investors, we have also worked towards establishing a number of tax advantageous provisions which have resulted into attracting foreign investors to via Cyprus for their investments.
If I can as well, Nicole, what has been interesting for Malta, not many people, or a few people are surprised, is that, you know, as an island in the very south of the Mediterranean, equidistant from Gibraltar and the Suez Canal, you know, almost equidistant from Southern Europe and Northern Africa, we, you know, an island which has a Anglo-Saxon administrative system. In fact, English is a second national language or a second official language. So all our laws are published in English and Maltese. It's something we inherited from the times where UK colony. our laws, especially our company law, is very much based on the UK system. So, you know, when we opened up to the financial services sector, it was rather easy for people used to the Anglo-Saxon system, you know, to come to Malta and do business, because we've been using the same system for, you know, a number of years. And, you know, perhaps Monica might be able to touch upon as well. Our legal system is quite interesting because it's a mix of continental law and...
We are essentially a civil law jurisdiction. However, we have especially our company law is modeled on UK law. So we have, I mean, it is a mix, as Karl said. So we kind of, we big times chose the legislation which suits us best. But obviously we have also our civil law is modeled on Roman law. And but primarily, yes, we can say that it is UK based generally.
Yeah, I think we are more focused just on this point, just to touch this point a little bit. Maybe Zoe can also vouch for that, but I think we are more focused on the common law and the UK law. We do not enjoy the best of both worlds.
The civil law, yes, we are basically modeled after the English law. As we're also a British colony. But I think we'll go into that more in depth throughout the session. Yes.
Excellent. So I want to jump ahead to something that I'm sure our members are very interested in learning, which is, you know, what are the main advantages of Cyprus and Malta as international business centers? You know, what would draw a company or perhaps a client into doing business in your respective jurisdictions?
Okay. Obviously, you know, we are a financial services center. We have an interesting fiscal regime, which has been around now for many years. I mentioned before, you know, as 1994. Malta works on we have a very strong holding regime. So basically, holding companies set up in Malta can have close to zero tax on dividends received from subsidiaries. I don't want to go into the technicalities because it can take a bit of time to explain, but I'll be happy to share data and sheet with participants, Nicole, if you wish, rather than going down into turning this into a technical presentation. But basically, we have a participating holding regime, which gives exemptions to subsidiaries that tick a number of boxes, and therefore receiving dividends into Malta from subsidiaries which are in Malta or outside of Malta that tick these boxes will give you quite an interesting tax rate at holding level. We then also have an interesting tax imputation system where you have trading income, so selling and buying goods or selling and buying services, whilst our corporate tax rate is as high as 35%. With our tax imputation system, shareholders and non-resident shareholders primarily can benefit from a refund of tax paid in Malta. So they would get a 6/7 refund on tax, which is paid directly to the shareholder. We're looking at adding another benefit today, which is called tax grouping, which could see companies, rather than applying for a tax refund and therefore paying tax and waiting for a period of time to get back their 6/7 refund, by applying tax grouping, pay a level of tax which could be as low as 5% on the group's total taxable income. We've also introduced some interesting new provisions, something called a notional interest deduction, where what the government is trying to do, or the fiscal authorities are trying to do, is give equity to anyone who takes loans from financial institutions, and therefore on interest paid to financial institutions can get a tax deduction to their P&L, to risk capital put in by shareholders. So, a shareholder puts in, an interest-free loan, puts in risk capital, therefore that risk capital is also recognized as carrying a notional interest, and therefore you get a tax deduction on that notional interest, which gives some interesting solutions and options to people who use Malta as a structure. Obviously, there are solutions for the holding of intellectual property. There are some particular industries, as I said, shipping is an area that has grown extensively and does extremely well. We have a tonnage tax regime which has been around for many years, has recently been scrutinized by the Commission and has been given the green light in its form, with some slight tweaks which have not changed much of the essence of the tonnage tax. It's still very much as it was. We have a solutions for the aviation industry. Malta has developed as a hub for the online gaming industry, which started in the late 90s and has, grown to quite a substantial area of business on the island. Recently, the jurisdiction has been looking at regulating the blockchain industry and encouraging people to use blockchain technology and register their softwares and have them registered in Malta and regulated. So a number of, Malta is always trying to be at the forefront of new technologies and even new concepts. Is there one single solution that makes us interesting? I would say no. I would say it's a number of varied solutions that makes the island what it is today, basically. And as I said, I wouldn't like to go into too much detail because we'll end up taking much more than 60 minutes that we have.
Nayia, could you share a little bit with us about Cyprus, or George?
George?
Yes, thank you. Cyprus has a lot of advantages as a jurisdiction, as an international business center, but we'll focus on the four main advantages. Of course, first one is tax system. And what's so important about the Cyprus tax system is simplicity. It's a very simple system that everyone can understand. It's quite straightforward. There is a uniform corporation tax at 12.5%. Having said that, in a lot of different types of companies, the effective tax rate could be 0 or up to 2.5%. For example, what we have is the IP box, intellectual property box regime, where up to 80% of its profit can be seen as a notional as deduction from the taxable profit, and therefore the maximum effective rate would be up to 2.5%. Cyprus has also the national interest deduction on any new capital introduced into the companies, and again that can reduce the effective tax rate up to 2.5%. Of course, there is the other important bit that there is in the Cyprus taxation system is the exceptional disposal of securities. For example, a company that is trading in shares, in bonds, on certain other securities is fully exempt from any taxation in Cyprus. Of course, there is no inheritance tax, there is no succession taxes whatsoever in Cyprus, and we have seen a lot of structures taking into that consideration in having Cyprus as part of their legal structure. Of course, Cyprus has introduced a lot of personal individual exceptions, therefore making it very attractive for high net worth individuals or senior management to relocate to Cyprus to take advantage of these incentives. Of course, there is certain other incentives as well for startups, for the film industry, again, very specialized regimes that make it attractive to use Cyprus as their base for implementing these regimes.
The second main advantage is definitely the judicial system, the legal and judicial system, which gives flexibility and is business-oriented. It provides certainty as it's based on case law from the common law systems. It's definitely transparent and it's reliable. The Cyprus legal system is also fully compliant with the EU, the Financial Action Task Force on Money Laundering, AML directives, the Financial Stability Forum laws and regulations, OECD, and FATCA. The EU membership is also a significant advantage for us, and as it guarantees an infrastructure that EU nationals are acquainted with. It facilitates EU transactions, and it gives non-EU nationals a stepping stone and the chance to transact with the EU.
So as mentioned, one of the main advantages is that Cyprus is a member of the European Union since 2004, as has been mentioned before, and part of the Eurozone in 2008. I mean, this gives a lot of stability, currency stability as well for the investments that are made through Cyprus, and therefore is quite important to have. The last one, people say that Cyprus is an island of saints. We say Cyprus is an island of lawyers and accountants. There is a very, Cyprus has one of the highest educational personnel in the whole world compared to percentages of population. Because of this education, most of the people are educated either in the UK or in the US. A lot of know-how exists in the island and can serve many different industries and many different investors. That has made Cyprus a big advantage in able to serve clients and their needs.
And that obviously has also helped in, the private sector and the lawyers and accountants that are very active in this industry. They have led initiatives to promote new legislations which, are happening in the rest of the world. So things that are happening in the rest of the world and are attractive have come to Cyprus as a result of private initiative, of course, with a certain communication and cooperation of the private sector and the government. So things like, for example, immigration laws which grant the rights of non-EU citizens to acquire EU citizenship, things like funds, things like the film industry, as George has said, and certain incentives, things like startups, the shipping industry. Cyprus is the third biggest regime in the world in terms of flags, of ship flags. So all these things have happened as a result of education, of reliable and high-level professionals, which together with the government have initiated the changes that were required in order to be up to date with today's world.
I think, Nayia, as well, one of the advantages we have as islands is the fact that we are small islands gives us, if you like, access to the authorities, which perhaps a lot of the jurisdictions don't have, in the sense of, as professionals, we are able to, I wouldn't say lobby, but work with the authorities to, improve legislation, improve regulation, and the authorities tend to have a policy whereby they would listen to the people on the ground, the professional who's dealing with the client, in terms of, trying to assure that A, we remain competitive as jurisdictions, and B, that we have regulation put in place that keeps us competitive. It doesn't mean it's easy to do business in Malta, it's an easy jurisdiction, but we try to keep ourselves as competitive as possible, and it's easier to do that because the regulator, the authorities, are accessible because the island is what it is. It's a small island, and getting to meet them is much easier than getting to meet authorities in perhaps larger jurisdictions. That gives a bit of an advantage that we've seen, and some of our competing jurisdictions, are slightly jealous of. Besides the fact that Malta being so small, the regulators, or at least members of the authority, would also be people we know. Yeah. So that obviously makes them more accessible, and they would always more or less be a phone calls away. So that's the advantage that obviously our clients find extremely attractive.
Very true. Very true. Also similar.
I can imagine it's the same situation in Cyprus.
So turning to the firms that you're here representing and to the manner in which these are structured, what has been the strategy and main driving force behind how the firms are structured today? If you could highlight the commonalities between the jurisdictions, if at all any, that drove the establishment of a company separate to the law firm.
Okay, if I can make a quick introduction. and then I'll hand over to Monica and to Claire, because they played an important part in the transition. As I said, in the late 80s, the law firm set up a small company, which at the time had 1.5 employees, who were handling all of the business. As the business grew, the law firm used lawyers to administer the companies, and the lawyers were employed by the corporate service provider. As the business grew and became more complex and more skills were required, so what I mean here is it wasn't just legal work or setting up of companies and pure company secretarial work, and there was accounts work, there were transactions that needed monitoring. A decision was taken to separate what is purely legal and therefore move lawyers out of the corporate service provider and bring in the professions required to administer companies. So that is where the likes of Claire came in. Claire is trained by ICSAS, which is a qualified company, been with the company for many years and is today a director of the company. And Claire was trained by Monica. Monica at the time was the person responsible within Fenlex Corporate Services to manage the companies. And therefore we saw a transition from lawyers to administrators, to accountants, to professions, people with a banking and finance profession. We have, economists, we have people who are pure management people. Why? Because our clients' needs are way beyond just what is legal. And so we decided to separate completely what is legal to legal. We're not advisors, we are implementers and administrators as a corporate service provider, and the lawyers do the lawyering and all that is required in terms of advice, structuring, etc., etc. I don't know whether you want to add anything, Monica, to that.
In fact, I was part of this transition when I joined the firm 20 years ago, and that explains the age. I was one of those few lawyers, where a team of 3 lawyers provided clients. And basically, at the time, we thought that we could do the job until the business developed in such a way that we realized that no, we need other skills. So this is when obviously we started employing, as Karl said, people with accountants, people with banking, tax background, compliance, and the likes. So this is when we, the lawyers, were moved out of the sector, and the non-lawyers, the corporate service providers, and I said accountants and the likes, came forward. And from a team of 3 people, now they are a team of 75. So with Claire and I now work sometimes on the same clients, and the lawyers would be roped in, obviously, when the clients would need legal advice. So we would assist on contract drafting, reviewing transactions, etc. Probably is a similar setup with yours, I'll imagine.
Well, from our side, obviously a very similar sort of mindset in terms of strategic decision making. I think we felt very sort of strongly the need, or let's say we've foreseen that the client would have become more sophisticated. Their needs would become more sophisticated, and this the decision to set up Nobel Trust was exactly to meet the expectation of the future client. So essentially, a client that doesn't come to you just to set up a company, but a client that comes to you just to provide business acumen, a client that comes to you to provide a business consultancy, to provide a comprehensive platform which will not only set up its company and prepare the secretarial documents and minutes of meetings, but also reliable professional people that would hold the client's hand throughout all the stages of his or her investments and growth and development of its company. So this was the mindset behind the setting up of Nobel Trust. It was obviously, and it currently has people from all disciplines. So we have lawyers, accountants, tax professionals, economists, and obviously professionals that are very experienced in the corporate services and banking services. Lately, the team is also enhanced by quite a few people on compliance, which is a very sort of important discipline nowadays. So it's a one-stop shop really for investors that wish to find solutions and wish to use Cyprus as the base for doing so.
I guess from our end, what we've realized over the years is our business is very much driven by client needs. In fact, whereas in the past we were typically pure corporate service providers, administering companies, today, whilst we still do that and it's the largest part of our business, but we're now also in the area of recruitment. We're now also in the area of providing service offices. We have a department called operations, which tends to end up get on its plate anything that doesn't fall into any of the other silos. We at times assist clients with technology, because what we tend to see is clients coming to Malta for the first time, and they would want someone to handhold them to the whole process of not only setting up the company, but finding staff, finding an office, putting technology in an office, and taking a decision years ago to, if we think we can do something properly and professionally for a client, we'll do it. If we can't do it, then we'll make sure it's outsourced to a reliable third party. And that over the years has grown the business. Whereas today we've grown, as I said, we have what we call facilities people, who have a number of employees who take care of the properties, our own client properties. So it's become something driven, as I said, by the growing business, by people coming to Malta and doing business. So it's quite interesting as our business has evolved over the years, and it's interesting because it keeps our business interesting because it's forever changing.
I think if I may add, the fact that we kind of make a distinction between the law firm and the corporate service provider, we still, we were housed until about 2 years ago under one roof. So, and we continue working very closely together, and you use a good term, which it's one-stop shop in the sense that the client comes to us and he's serviced from a number of angles around one table. So it facilitates the client having to deal with a number of different providers. So even though we did grow, client still feels that has one team, and one personal.
We've realized over the years that the client wants that. The client wants to have a personal relationship with a firm, if possible with just one person at that firm, and that person will have to coordinate and make sure that all his needs are fulfilled and all the services are provided. So we've tried to do that over the past years, and I think we will do our best to remain doing so, because it's one of the biggest attractions. Because people, once they come to an island and they feel they can trust the firm, they don't want to have to shop around or go around for other services.
It's interesting that, Karl, that you've mentioned, service offices. It's something that we've also developed 3-4 years ago with exactly the same rationale, and property maintenance and management essentially on behalf of clients. That's also something that has been requested very thoroughly by clients, and we have had to react, and therefore have followed a very similar sort of model in trying to sort of service clients in this sort of, I would say, niche area from one perspective, because it's quite niche for firms like us to handle this. But again, it's just I think all these exhibit that we, as both jurisdictions and both firms, we share a very similar sort of vision as to what servicing client needs, what servicing a client needs, and how important it is to be there for the client for any requirement that he may have.
Yeah, and also now one of the things that we're developing now, in fact, over the past few years, we've had quite a rigid timetable of in-house training, because we have an obligation to train our staff, a number of areas where we're obliged to do it, And we've realized that all the training sessions we've put together have value. And as of this year, we've decided to also start offering that training to third parties. So there is a wealth of knowledge that we've accumulated over a period of time in terms of creating training packages for ourselves. That value now is marketable. So this year we're taking that product and going to market with it. So this is, the idea is that when we meet, we put together and use to grow our business. So that's what keeps our job, as I said before, extremely interesting, because we're always trying to do new and different things.
So that leads me to some of our other questions, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I want to make sure we get to share this information with the listeners, and that is sort of the evolution of this model and the challenges. So may you each touch base on what each firm considers to be the challenges ahead, both for your firms and as a jurisdiction established within the EU. And for the benefit of our listeners, can you elaborate on the salient features that attract business to your jurisdictions?
Let's start with the challenges. I mean, I think it's no news to anyone that compliance and regulation have become a challenge that everyone is facing. Since 2008, authorities have been in overdrive in terms of regulating and over-regulating a number of sectors, the financial services sectors being one of them. So we have been heavily affected by the requirements, to keep up with new regulation and compliance regimes that are being forced upon us. A few years back, we would have had one person who would have had a dual role handling compliance and regulation. In the last 2 years, we now have a team of 7. We have now an overhead cost of 7 full-timers handling compliance and our regulatory requirements. And the challenge that brings is not just for us, it's also for our clients to understand that, unfortunately, the world is not what it was pre-2008, that today, there is a move towards full transparency, that the concept of privacy conflicts with our requirement to report. Therefore, trying to marry our obligations in terms of compliance and regulation versus our clients' wish, to do business and keeps the privacy that he wants to keep. And this probably is a bigger issue for the private wealth clients, for the individual clients, than for the large corporates, because the large corporate is a large corporate, they've been used to this. So I guess we're facing quite a big challenge in that area. It's a challenge we've taken head on, and I think we've handled it well, and we're in a good position today. Another challenge that we're facing is the banking sector, where we are seeing that banks have become extremely risk averse. We all know that banks have been hit by heavy fines, throughout the US and the EU. There have been banks that had, big AML issues, and recently, and because of that, banks are de-risking, and it's become extremely difficult for clients to do cross-border transactions, because banks are not too keen to take on certain types of industries, and also to take on certain types of cross-border transactions. So if you have to tell me what are the 2 biggest challenges, I would say that it's compliance and banking today. Obviously there are others, but those are the 2 main ones.
Similarly, we see compliance as a very big challenge as well. We have, however, adapted a more sort of optimistic way of looking at compliance. I think it's a bit forceful, but I think if you look at it from an optimistic side of view, you just realize that by applying compliance, which can be rigorous, can be inefficient cost-wise and very time-consuming, you do make sure that clients are here in Cyprus or Malta or any of the jurisdictions of the European Union because they have a genuine interest to be here. We consider compliance in the long term to be challenging, but at the end of the day, if handled correctly, it could be a blessing. And that's why we as advisors, we are here to hold the client and to guide the client in order to deal with the compliance challenges in the right way. And a second, banking is also, we have similar issues with banks and being extremely risk averse and being extremely inquiring in terms of new clients. So I don't have anything more to add other than what Karl has already very correctly pointed out. But I think another area where we see as another big challenge, not only for this industry, but for the fiduciary industry, for the law firms, but for all professional services, is technology. Technology is rapidly expanding in this world. It's being applied and it's changing our lives by the minute, and we are all sort of looking in all, trying to see what is going to be next, what is going to come next. Are things going to be replaced by artificial intelligence? Are smart contracts going to be in place, and therefore will make ourselves a little bit redundant? This is another issue that again makes us consider the future a bit uncertain, but at the same time also enhancing the attitude and the strategy that we follow as firms to be value-added advisors to clients. Essentially, you cannot just do repetitive work, you just have to do added value work, and if you can do that, then essentially you can, and you will be able to overcome the challenges that technology may bring in repetitive tasks. You guys, anything else?
Yes, what I would like to add regarding compliance, of course, the banks, the corporate service providers, the lawyers, the accountants, all have to abide with the AML directives that come from the European Union and to abide with the same rules. So what we are trying to do here at Nobel Trust and ID Law is to educate clients. They need to understand that, yes, there is a cost of compliance, but the cost of not being able to operate is even bigger. So we're trying to educate them to try to understand what is the requirements of the legislation, what to need to have in place, and really be compliant with us and the banking system at the same time will allow them to operate smoothly and achieve their targets. I mean, for one of the examples we have is the compliance with KYC, FATCA, CRS. Of course, here, what we have tried to do is to, as I said before, try for the clients to understand the concepts, try to understand why this is happening and how these are affecting their operations through Cyprus. It's important to see that as an opportunity versus probably competitors or other factors in their industry they are operating, that this will provide them with a competitive advantage that would be able to run smoothly their operations.
And if I may add, it's important to note that our two entities are actually regulated by two different authorities. The law firm is regulated by the Cyprus Bar Association, whereas the service provider is regulated by the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission. And though this different regulation actually gives us more administration workload and causes some hardship internally, we believe that it gives better results and better quality to our clients in terms of certainty.
Fully agree. I mean, compliance is what it is. The regulators are what they are, and I think it would give comfort to our clients, that we are heavily regulated, but it's, as I said, it's been a challenge. We're happy where we are today. We've invested a lot of time, efforts, and money in human resources and in technology to help us with this. But I think, as you've been saying, Nayia, it puts you in a good place and gives comfort to clients. And it also weans out, the cowboys from the Indians, if you like, because compliance and complying with regulation requires quite a bit of investment. And hopefully, what it will do is make sure that the players left in the market are good players, and I guess both our jurisdictions want to make sure, that we maintain the reputation we have, and, that we get good business. One other challenge that there is, and I believe you're probably facing it as well, Nayia, is, the changes in a broad brush term in tax rules, in the sense of people, not being able to set up conduit companies, that businesses need to be real businesses, that you need to have a nexus to Malta, you need substance on the ground, which has seen, I think, a positive change in the sense of our clients now, and you mentioned it yourself earlier, clients now come here to do real business, therefore they have offices in Malta, they have employees in Malta, they trade through Malta, they invest, they create value in Malta. So that's a change we've seen over the past few years, which is extremely interesting. So it creates a bit more challenge for the client, because he needs to set up a real business, so he needs to put in more investment, but then it's far more rewarding, to both to the client and to the island, because you get value add, once that investment takes off. So
we've seen large companies.
Yeah, we have clients who employ over 300 people today, doing, and we had them set up 10 years ago. We've seen the business grow. Today, they're one of the larger employers on the island, doing real value added in Malta. That's the sort of business we've been attracting, and we're happy to do business with.
So you both.
I think. Sorry, just a very minor remark.
I was going to say, you both mentioned compliance as a challenge or an issue that you're looking to overcome. So as we come to the kind of end of our program today, I'm wondering if you can give us some information on whether or not you feel this is affecting the amount and value of business driven to your respective jurisdictions, and any clear tactics you're using to overcome those, and any closing thoughts.
I think, as we already mentioned, compliance and regulation has been a challenge, but it's created an opportunity. It's created an opportunity in the sense that you take a good look at your business, and you take a good look at your clients, and it helps and guides you in ensuring that, as we said before, the business you bring on board is good business. Most of we're regulated as they are in Cyprus by the Malta Financial Services Authority. And they look at our policies, our governance policies, they look at the way we do things. So we did have to brush up, tighten up, and make sure we do things properly. It's put us in a good place, for future challenges. Whilst compliance can be seen as, a nuisance to people who are in operations, because the compliance people are always breathing down their back to make sure they're doing things by the book, it helps everyone work with a similar mindset. We've got clear policies and procedures that we follow, and we try to frame those in a manner that allows the operation to run smoothly. It's as I said, been painful to implement, but it's put us in a very good place today to cater for any challenges that can come out in the near future, because we know AML 5 has just been implemented, AML 6 is already on the table. This is the new world we live in. It's a regulation compliance world. Get yourself in a good place, and you're ready for the future. And that's I think what we've done to handle that.
If just as a concluding thought, I would say that the European Union undoubtedly offers safety, offers quality, and these usually should be associated with regulation. I do not consider us to be victims of regulation. I consider us to be countries that are fulfilling and applying the regulation in a rigorous manner in order to offer this platform to clients who wish and investors who wish to find safety, to operate in a market that is fair, that is transparent, that is free, a market that would offer security for their investment. I think these are important elements which unfortunately or fortunately are accompanied by regulation and by rules that need to be followed. So I think that I would like to just to sum up in saying that We see the future ahead of us to be bright. We believe that professional services and the kind of services that we offer in Cyprus and Malta to flourish in the future if they're done in the right way, in the professional way, in a value-added way. And we believe that I believe that our jurisdiction, both jurisdictions, will thrive. Also, I think the Nobel Trust, Ioannis Dimitriou, Fenlex, Fenech and Fenech, has obviously been a success story for both firms, and that's why we are sitting and presenting here today. And therefore, we just look forward to expanding our businesses further and seeing a bigger growth.